What's going on, guys? Saga Plays here, coming at you with the last review for this week. Spoiler wise for Innistrad Crimson Vow. This week I'll be doing or today, not this week, sorry. I'll be doing all the multicolored and colorless rares and mythics. And then starting tomorrow, I'll get to any other spoilers that have been released this past week so far. So because I know yesterday I said that I would try and get to do any other rares and mythics that were released over the past week, but seeing as today I've already pulled up all the rares and mythics of multicolored and colorless, so I'll be doing these today, and then I'll do pretty much go by date starting tomorrow, and then I'll be doing it, but spoilers by the date each time they're released, or until there's like a good amount released that I can do a video on. That's roughly 20 to 30 minutes, like all these other reviews have been so far. So, starting out is a Planeswalker Kaya Geist Hunter for 1 white black legendary Planeswalker Kaya, starting out with 3 loyalty. Her uptake +1 is creatures you control gain death touch until end of turn. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature token you control. Her downtake -2 is until end of turn, if one or more tokens would be created under your control, twice that many of those tokens are created instead. Downtake 6, or her ultimate, is exile all cards from all graveyards, then create a 1/1 white spirit creature token for with flying for each card exiled this way. Alright, so right off the bat, her uptake, even though it targets all your creatures get death touch, which is a downside, and then if you got a token on the battlefield, a creature token, then it gets a +1/+1 counter, which isn't bad either, mainly because the set does somewhat rely on creature tokens, or like you generating creature tokens in some way. And then it's -2. You're pretty much doubling the amount of tokens you would make that turn, which isn't bad. It's pretty much identical to Anointed Processions, where it makes twice the amount of tokens. Like, say I create a 1/1 white spirit, 1/1 white spirit token with flying, and if that ability was triggered prior to that spirit coming on being made, I would get 2 of them instead. So it just doubles the amount you get, and then -6. That is really good, mainly because if you're like a mill deck, or you need a graveyard flooded with cards, that is good because you can then exile it, making them no longer touchable unless by some other means, which I only can think of Kaya the Exonerable from Kaldheim, where her ultimate is her emblem being allowed to cast legendary spells without paying their mana cost from exile, graveyard, or hand. So that's the only way I could think of to get cards from exile, but those only target legendary spells, which really limits your options. But I mean, like, getting a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying is not that bad. Better is if either you or your opponent's graveyards are very stacked with a lot of cards. And then price wise for her, 24.94. Yeah, people will definitely be gunning for her, trying to pull her or purchase her. And then 35.78 for her borderless. But I mean, her abilities are fairly good. Mainly the uptake where all your creatures get death touch is really useful. So I won't deny the price. Second is Olivia Crimson Bride, who is one of the kind of the key characters of this set for Crimson Vow with the whole marriage thing going on. So she's 4 black red legendary creature vampire noble with flying 3/4 flying haste, and then whenever Olivia Crimson Bride attacks, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, tapped and attacking. It gains whenever you don't control a legendary vampire, exile this card. Alright, so pretty much right off the bat, when she attacks, you are literally able to get a creature card. Doesn't specify whether it's normal or legendary, so that's good. That's good. So you can just get it, comes onto the battlefield, and it's tapped and attacking, so that's nice to have. But its downside is if you don't control a legendary vampire, then it's exiled. So you gotta make sure you have a legendary vampire. But if you like have a Masquerade Nexus out on the battlefield, then you would just need a legendary creature at that point because Masquerade Nexus makes all creature types, or pretty much makes all creature types, which is very useful because then you're not focusing on a creature type, just like a legendary creature is what you need on the battlefield at that point for as long as you have Masquerade Nexus out. So, I mean, the ability is good. Oh, yeah, and then here's her alternate art showcase art. And then she's been spoiled, one of the first few spoilers, so she's already out. And 1533 for her normal, and then basically $40 for her showcase, and then $39 for her alternate art as Sisters of the Undead, which I do not know of from like any horror stories or mythological legends, that type of thing, like Dracula is. But yeah, I mean, like, she's like mid range. Pe- People may not be using her because she's a 6 CMC spell, so, and then when she comes in, her power and toughness are lower than, but her ability makes up for it. But that just depends on if you're able to actually. I mean, it triggers when she attacks, which is not bad because otherwise you really wouldn't run her, but you're only getting one per turn each time she attacks, so it's really a downside if you're in a commander game or like you're playing her late game, so it's really like depending on how far you get or if you even have enough mana to cast her. So I understand her price being low. Second one is Odric Blood Cursed for 1 red white legendary creature vampire soldier, power 3, toughness 3. And then his ability is when Odric Blood Cursed enters the battlefield, create X blood tokens, where X is the number of abilities from among flying, first strike, double strike, death touch, haste, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink, menace, reach, trample, vigilant, and vigilance found among creatures you control. Count each ability only once. Alright, so pretty much I can already tell you right off the bat, you will not be running him as a commander, mainly because like you're creating a blood token for each keyword that you have of creatures you have on the battlefield. So like if a creature has death touch and flying, it will only count for one of those. So pretty much you would not run him as a commander, you would probably run him as one of your 99 cards in a commander deck, or he would not be one of your key creatures in your standard pioneer decks whatsoever because he only can create a blood because casting when he enters the battlefield he and you have no other creatures, you will not be creating any blood tokens because he does not have any keywords himself. So price wise I won't be surprised if he's very low, mainly because like he's very questionable when being used. Yeah, he's pretty much border borderline $5. So I mean, like people may use him, but they would have to play him like when you know you are guaranteed at least one blood token, and then he's almost $10 for his showcase. which honestly is not that bad art. I mean, it's $9, 8.99 as the low, but 9.55 for market price, which is what I will always be going by, market price only. That is just TCG will always show you the lowest in terms of your settings. So, but yeah, I mean, people may just buy his showcase for the art, which is not bad. I will say that is fairly good art. The ability, on the other hand, is a downside to him. So I won't deny it there because, like I said, just casting him, you are not getting with him only being the only creature on the battlefield. You are not getting anything. You are just getting a 3/3 legendary vampire. Next one is Edgar Charmed Groom, which is for 2 white black legendary creature vampire noble 4/4 with abilities of other vampires you control get +1/+1. When Edgar Charmed Groom dies, return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. And then his flip side is Edgar Markov's Coffin Legendary Artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a 1/1 white and black vampire creature token with lifelink and put a bloodline counter on Edgar Markov's Coffin. If there are 3 or more bloodline counters on it, remove those counters and transform it. Alright, so right off the bat I can tell you, I mean, like, casting him earliest would be turn 4, is it, if you don't have any other form of ramp in Commander like a Soul Ring, but like in a normal game, turn 4 earliest if you don't ramp early, mainly because since he's in white and black, ramp is not as strong as it is in green, that type of thing, so, I mean, literally him dying, he pretty much will flip over to his other side, and then once that has 3 or more blood counters, he flips over again, and that's pretty much like a loop in itself, as long as he does not like die or he is not exiled, because otherwise you're gonna need like Kaya the Exonerable to get him back from exile if you are not running multiple copies of him in a standard Pioneer non-commander format. But I mean, in Commander, you would probably have him as your commander because he is difficult to remove unless you exile him, mainly because of the fact that when he dies, he transforms and then go flip over again once conditions are met for him to flip over from his coffin side. So I mean, price wise, let's see, because he should have been released. Edgar Markov, 1385, but 1459, yeah, and then 2106, and then for the 2106 for Showcase 3498 for Dracula the Voyager, which is his uh special art, not alternate. But yeah, I mean, but let's see the other Casket of the Native Earth. All right, can you? No, you can't. All right, yeah. So I mean, people would probably get this version of him for the art, but I mean, ability wise, it's fairly good. And the only way to get rid of him is to exile him, because when he dies, he will just flip over, and then his other side, once those conditions are met, he just flips back to being a creature, and then once the creature dies, flips over to artifact. Once artifact conditions, it's just a loop, because the only other way is to exile him, because even if he dies, he pretty much when he dies, he will be flipped over, returning to his owner's battlefield, because as because uh sorry, pretty much he will return to the battlefield under his owner's control. So your opponent will only be able to keep him on the creature side for so long, because the only other way, like I said, to remove him, I've said this already a couple times, but you have to exile him to set when he gets onto the battlefield. Kill spells, or dealing damage to them will not work. You will just cause them to flip over, which just gives you another problem to deal with. And then that problem will be turned back into Edgar Charmed Groom and such. It's a loop that the only way to get rid of is via exile. So next card, next multi is Ureth Tormented Prophet for 1 blue-red legendary creature, human wizard, 2/4. If you would draw a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library instead. You may play those cards this turn. Alright, so right off the bat, I can tell you, not a commander, but I mean like that. Instead of drawing, you are able to look at you exile the top 2, and then you can cast those this turn, which isn't a downside, but you are sacrificing the whole draw part to add to your hand, because once she's on the battlefield, you're only limited to the cards on your hand, in your hand, not you can no longer draw cards from the top of your library. You could search for cards, but that would require you to use mana cast from your hand or be lucky enough to get a search card from the top 2 cards that are exiled. So I mean, I can flat out tell you she may be useful in a standard Pioneer format, but like in Commander, she that would depend on your deck. So price wise, 907, yeah. So people would definitely want to use her. 949 for the special art of Rhinefield Delusional Minion, and then showcase is 1387. Alright, so people will be using her from this price point alone. I can tell people will be using her for her ability, but you are no longer able to draw cards from the top of your library. Instead, you're just exiling top 2. So I mean, I can understand the low price point of less than 15, but it's she will be used. I will tell you. I can say that for sure. Sorry, just needed a drink of water. All right. Oop, my mistake. Okay, Old Rexstein, 1 black green legendary creature, human peasant, 1/4. When Old Rustine enters the battlefield or at the beginning of your upkeep, mill a card. If a land card is milled this way, create a treasure token. If a creature card is milled this way, create a 1/1 green insect token. If a non-creature, non-land card is milled this way, create a blood token. Sorry guys. But I mean right off the bat, pretty much right off the bat, when you mill the top card, it's a trade-off basically with him. So I mean, like before your draw step happens, you exile the top card. If it's a land, or not exile, but if you mill a land, you get a treasure. So you're not losing mana. You are just missing a land drop because that treasure can only be used once. If it's a creature, then you're getting a substitute creature, but it is fairly weak. You would mainly use it as a chump blocker. Sorry, talking a lot. If it's a non-land, non-creature, then it's a blood token. So enchantments, artifacts, instances, and sorceries, those 4 will apply to being created as a blood token in place of it being milled. So you are getting a form of value from it, but like this only applies to when this ability is triggered during your upkeep. So you're only getting 1 of each per mill. So won't deny it there. Won't go past it. I can't see how well, but I mean, like, if you're trying to mill yourself out, this is a card you would want because you're getting some form of benefit as you mill. So, sorry. So, I mean, I won't deny it there. But, I mean, alright, so 803, it will be, I can, just by the price point, anything higher than $5, pretty much that card will be used in some way, not as much, but it will be used. And then 2533, that's a big jump from $8 to, but that's the showcase. People like showcase arts. That's just how it works. I mean, I cannot say just from the price point alone, people are getting his showcase for the art for as priority and then the ability, but just by comparing, just by the normal one alone, people would just use them for like in a mill deck because you're milling yourself, you're not milling your opponent. So won't deny that. Next one, Runo Stromkirk, one blue black legendary creature vampire cleric 1/4 with flying. When Runo Stromkirk enters the battlefield, put a up to one target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may reveal that card if a creature with mana value 6 or greater is revealed. This way, transform Runo's Stromkirk, and he turns into Krothus, Lord of the Deep, legendary creature, Kraken Horror, flying, or he's a 3/5 with flying. Whenever Krothus, Lord of the Deep, attacks, create a tap and attacking token that's a copy of another target creature, another target attacking creature. If that creature is a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent, create two of those tokens instead. Alright, so right off the bat, when you would want to cast them when you know for sure you have a creature card with mana value 6 or greater in your graveyard, because then when he enters, you take that card, slap it on right on top of your library. Hopefully your opponent does not do anything to your library, and then you're able to and then upkeep during your upkeep you just reveal it, it flips over, and you get a 3/5, and then when the Crothus attacks, you're able to get a copy of another creature which isn't a downside, but if it's a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent, you get two instead, one, which is not even a downside whatsoever. But I mean, like comboing this with at using a mask with Nexus, like I said earlier, you will be pretty much getting two copies of that creature instead each time, instead of one if it's outside of Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent. So no, there's no downside to this card. I just wonder how much play there is to him. Oop, can't spell. Runo Stromkirk, alright. So 370, alright, so people really don't see the advantage. Probably I can understand why, because the fact that he's 3 CMC and you are pretty much betting on the chance that either you are able to get a 6 CMC or greater creature into your graveyard, and then it gets placed to the top, or the fact that you're gonna have to try and risk getting a creature of 6 or greater on top. So, because if I recall, yeah, I mean, at the beginning of your upkeep, it happens each time, but like you're gonna, you would want him to flip over as soon as possible. So I mean, you're pretty much like risking it. Pretty much what you would need to reveal it in order to in order for you to get a good trader out of it. I mean, 1284 for the showcase of the black and white showcase, and then 1369 for the alternate showcase. So I mean, I don't know. I won't say much about like if he will be used to play, but He may be used, I'm not too sure, but I would probably use him, but I don't know how well I would use him. But yeah, uh, alright, next one is Alana and Elena partners. Two red green legendary creature human ranger 2/3 with first strike reach and at the beginning of combat on your turn put X +1/+1 counters on another creature you control where X is Helena and Elena's power. This creature gains haste until end of turn. Alright, so no downside to this. I mean like you would need to make their power greater if you're wanting to pump up your other creatures for sure. But I mean, like, no downside to it. The only downside is like the power, but like there are ways for you to boost the power of Helena and Elena in red and green. Because I mean, green hero to give a creature trample with +1/+1 counters, or that type of thing. Red hero to do buff up your creatures super quickly with cheap spells. So I mean, no downside. They'll probably be a commander, but in standard they may be used as well. So I mean, 373. All right, so price was lower than I was expecting. I was thinking like more to 5 to 6, but I mean 581 for showcase. All right. So I mean they may not be used as well, but people may run them. I'm not too sure. I won't emphasize the fact that people will run them. People have different mindsets, that type of thing. So who knows if their price will go up, down. But yeah, it appears right now that they won't be used as much or at all. Next one, Tauren's Fist of the Angels. One green white legendary creature, human cleric, 2/2 with training, and whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 1/1 green and white human soldier token with training. Alright. So you are getting pretty much you're getting a whenever you're casting a creature spell, so like he is creatures oriented, so he would run well with multiple creatures, but just by casting a creature spell, so it doesn't have to hit the battlefield as long as you cast it. You're getting a 1/1 token with training on it, which helps boost your other training abilities. Since it's whenever this creature attacks with another creature with greater power, put a +1/+1 on this creature. So it's boosting itself, and you're getting multiple copies, or not copies, but you're getting multiple tokens that have it, which will be useful when it comes to like going for an all-out attack, as long as you have one creature that's stronger than the rest. Right? So price. Oh wow. Alright. Torin's Fist of Angels. Wow. So I mean that's right there, 175 as the minimum, but here 194 and then 297 right here for the showcase, and then Dr. John Seward 1195. All right, so he's fairly low. People may not run him. People may run like one copy of him, mainly because of the fact that he's a 2/2, so he can die fairly easily, and the fact that he relies on you casting a creature spell. And then the training only works is if you have a creature stronger than the rest. So I mean, I understand the fact why he's not used will not be used as much. Knock the Omnivore, two green blue legendary creature frog, 3/3. Whenever a frog you control attacks, mill 3 cards. Whenever a permanent is put into your graveyard from your library, exile it with a croak counter on it. You may play lands and cast spells from among cards you own in exile with croak counters on them. Alright, So right off the bat, you can, and whenever it attacks, you mill 3 cards, but that's ability of its own. And then whenever a permanent card goes into the graveyard from your library, it's exiled with a crow counter. So this is one way to be able to use cards from your exile, which is very useful mainly because like those will be difficult for your opponent to mess with. And even if the mill isn't coming from Grolnok himself, as long as it's being milled from your library in some way, shape, or form, and it's exiled instead. So you're able to make use of that fact and play lands and cast spells from them. So you won't be missing a land drop if a land goes into exile, which is nice. But you will need them on the battlefield in order to cast them from exile. So he will die fairly quickly, but I would say if you're able to keep him on the battlefield, you're able to make use of that ability. And then here's his alternate art. So let's see where he places in price. All right, 199 for regular, 287. So he won't be used as much, probably because of the fact that you need him on the battlefield in order to cast those exile, make use of those exile cards. So the fact that he can die fairly quickly is not a good side to him. So I understand the fact that his price is super low. So I won't push past there. Next one is Ange. Angie, I believe Angie Made of Dishonor. 2 black red legendary creature vampire 4/5. Whenever Ange Made of Dishonor and slash or one or more other vampires enters the battlefield under your control, create a blood token. This ability triggers only once each turn. Pay to sacrifice another creature or a blood token. Each opponent loses 2 life. You gain 2 life. Alright, so this card will probably be run in tandem with Olivia. So pretty much the fact that the ability only triggers once per turn is a downside to it, but the fact that creates a blood token whenever one or more vampires enters the battlefield under your control is a bright side because you're getting something after you cast them, and then you can sacrifice those if you don't want to discard a card to draw a card. You can sacrifice those blood tokens or creatures, and your opponents lose 2 life, and you gain 2 life, and you can repeat this ability as many times as you have blood tokens and or creatures. So I mean, she may be used in tandem with Olivia, which I won't be surprised is if I see 251, 390 for the showcase. So on the low spectrum, people may run like 1 or 2 copies of her. Not surprising, mainly because there are a bunch of other good cards from this set in colors of black and red. So not surprising. People may run her, not too sure, but yeah, 3 more cards to go. And this one you can see the alternate art. Dorothea, Vengeful Victim for a white blue legendary creature spirit 4/4 with flying, and whenever Dorothea, Vengeful Victim attacks or blocks, sacrifice it at the end of combat. Dis- disturb 1 white blue, excuse me, and she'll flip over to Dorothea's Retribution, which is an enchantment aura, enchant creature. Enchanted creature has, whenever this creature attacks, create a 4/4 white spirit creature token with flying that's tapped and attacking. Sacrifice that token at the end of combat. If Dorothea Retribution would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. Alright, so I can already tell she may not be run that much, but I mean, like, casting for a 2 CMC, you get a 4/4, but if Dorothea attacks or blocks, you have to sacrifice her at the end of that combat, which is the downside. But it allows you to make use of her disturb cost, and she will become an enchantment which you attach to a creature, and then you will get a 4/4 white spirit with token with flying coming to the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Even though if it gets sacrificed at the end of combat, just getting that extra 4 power onto the battlefield, you can make use of to make your opponent use up one more blocker if they can. Otherwise, they will be taking the 4 damage. And then I understand the whole exile it when it is supposed to go to the graveyard from anywhere. I mean, understandable. All these cards that have a disturb cost, that effect usually does apply to them. But I mean, I won't be surprised if people will be using her Dor. I cannot type Dorothea, Vengeful Victim. Here she is. So 271 for a low price, but 203 and then 297 for showcase. All right, so price wise, she won't be used mainly because of the fact that she's better when you flip her over. But I mean, like for Toon CMC, you get a 4/4, which isn't bad in my eyes. I mean, I probably people won't run her as much, but you may run a copy to as like a early make use of type of creature. So I can't deny that fact. But I mean, she may be run, but not as much. But I mean, yeah, I just like doing this to the art. It's very fun. All right, next, and then our only two colorless rares: Dollhouse of Horrors for 5 mana of any 5 mana artifact. 1 tap, exile a creature card from your graveyard. Create a copy of the exiled card, but it's a 0/0 artifact construct creature token in addition to its other types with this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. That creature gains haste until end of turn. Activate only whenever you could cast a sorcery. Alright, so this spell already has limitations in terms of when it can be triggered, and the fact that I mean, you're able to make use of getting that creature out onto the battlefield as it exiles, but it's a 0/0 with, and its power and toughness are equal to the amount of artifacts you control, which is a downside if you do not have that many artifacts on the battlefield. So I won't be surprised if it's not run that often, mainly because of the fact it costs 5 mana to bring down to cast, and then if you're able to let it if you're able to get it onto the battlefield, you have to pay 1 more mana to trigger it. So, downside is the fact that you're spending 6 mana 1 turn to get a 2/2 guaranteed, and then however many more depending on the amount of artifacts you have on the battlefield. So, it's obviously an artifact use cards artifact required card. So I mean, 423, not bad. Mainly if you're run 474 for market, 588 for the extended art. So I mean, like if you're running a colorless deck, then this card would you would be able to make use of this card because you can pretty much like get it doesn't matter if your creature is super powerful or not. It just depends on your artifacts. And the fact that, but I mean, like sometimes you don't even care about power and toughness as long as you can make use of uh the creature's triggered ability. Then people are willing to put this card into their deck so that they could get that card back in order to make use of its trigger if it's like crucial or you can milk it out as much as possible. So I mean, I understand the price point now with the fact, but I mean, like this is pretty much like a if you want to trigger it upon same turn as you cast it, you would need at least 6, or not at least 6, but you would need 6 mana. But I mean, like there are ways to untap it. So I mean, you would need at least 6 in order to trigger it once. And so yeah, I won't deny the fact that now seeing the price point, people would make use of it, but not as much. So they would probably run one or two copies. Last one for today is Investigator's Journal for 2 mana, Artifact Clue. Investigator's Journal enters the battlefield with a number of suspect counters on it equal to the number of creatures a player controls. Pay 2 tap, remove a suspect counter on from Investigator's Journal, draw a card. 2 sacrifice Investigator's Journal to draw a card. Alright, so the fact that this is a clue you can make use of for any of those decks that pretty much need a clue, even if it's not a clue token, it's still a clue. This is the first time I've seen a artifact clue that's not a token. It is a castable permanent that you're able to get on the battlefield. And then if you, even if you don't control the most creatures, as long as when your opponents control, you can pick one of your opponents that has the most creatures, and you will get that many suspect counters, and then you can remove those suspect counters to draw a card, and then after it runs out of suspect counters, you just pay to, like you would do a normal clue, sacrifice it to draw a card. So, I mean, this is a fairly good card, and then here's its extended border, so I mean, not bad. And then price point is 288 for normal, 675 for extended, and then Harker's Journal, there's no price, but it's as low as 21, 24. So I mean, fairly good card. You probably will run at least at most 2 copies. I mean, like if you're able to get as a lot of suspect counters on it, then you will be able to make use of it. But with this, that'll be the end of the video. Hope you guys enjoyed and have a nice day. See you guys.